Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Laundromat Millionaire Show, sponsored by HM Company Drain Troughs. Today, we have an interesting episode for you, but it is just me and Dave. Today, we're going to be talking about a question that often pops up in his coaching sessions, and that is for pickup and delivery. Who are our ideal avatars? What types of customers should we be searching for and why? So today, Dave is going to break that down into 4 categories, tell you which customers to definitely focus on and which customers to avoid. So we have a lot in store today. Let's go ahead and get started with this episode.
Gotten a bit of a reputation for Dave thinks that commercial sucks and we shouldn't do commercial.
They're not always the right fit, but they can be the right fit.
Just learn from my dumb mistakes. Find out if what you do best aligns with their needs. All right, so welcome back to another episode, guys. The first thing I want to do is just point out to you part of the reason that I wanted to do this episode. There's kind of 2 parts to it. One of them is I personally don't think I've done a very good job of explaining myself to the industry. And so I hope that this will clarify some things. I've gotten a bit of a reputation for Dave thinks that commercial sucks and we shouldn't do commercial. And that's not what I think at all. So that's on me. I'll fully acknowledge that I've probably even said that at some point, not really meaning it in the way that it came across.
I think it's a matter of having the same definitions.
Yeah,
for what we consider commercial and what we consider small business to somebody else, they might consider all of it commercial. So we're going to really dive into that today.
Yeah. And then the other side of it is kind of what Carla is referring to is, obviously we go to pretty much all the conferences and things like that in the industry. And I think our industry, aside from like me and Carla, we're just 2 people, but I don't think we do a very good job in totality of the industry of defining what commercial means. Residential's pretty straightforward, and we'll go into that and describe why we are big fans of that. But, we go to these conferences and we hear independent speakers about this is how I find commercial business, and this is how I do accounts, and this is how I do contracts. And we hear expert panel discussions with 3 or 4 people on the stage, and the panel discussion might be framed in some way around this is a commercial discussion of
getting commercial
panelists.
Accounts. That's always a big one.
Those kind of things. And honestly, even podcasts, I don't know that we've ever really done this, but other people have done it. And it kind of bothers me. Maybe it's semantics, but what I really hope we do is I tell my coaching clients all the time when they get really tripped up on this in private one-on-one coaching, and I tell them, look, the first thing we have to all do as an industry, whenever we have a conversation, whether it's one-on-one or in a group setting, is we have to define what we're discussing, or we lead each other astray and by mistake, right? We don't mean to. And when I sit in these conferences and stuff, sometimes I get really frustrated. Although I know everybody on stage means well and knows what they're talking about, the people on the floor, if there's 200-300 people at a conference, they may not understand when that person says commercial, I think something different. So that's the purpose of this whole episode, is just to kind of break down what I call the 4 different segments for pickup and delivery service. And we're going to explain for you why we focus on the things we do, but we're not here to say that you're crazy or dumb or whatever. If you do something different, we just want you to have it clearly defined. And of course, as we always stress, know your numbers and know your margins. Don't guess. We don't want anyone out there doing business that's not making good money. So keep that in mind as well. So before we jump into the kind of 4 different segments as I kind of silo them out, one of the things I want to kind of always remind people on is when we do these podcasts, I think some people know us better than others and know our background and our history and where the context comes from. And one of the things I always want to remind people of is, yes, we are operators. We have a chain of laundromats. We have a fleet of delivery vans here in Cincinnati. We have a team of about 40 people. We've been doing wash, dry, fold for about 12 years, and we've been doing pickup and delivery for almost 9. So that is all true. We're in Cincinnati, which is roughly the number 35 market in the country. So we're not in the huge markets, but we're not in the country either. But the context that we bring all this knowledge and experience to you from is more than just that. It's more than just we own laundromats and we do delivery and this is what we do. That's the beginning of it. I want to kind of remind you guys that I've been coaching independent operators all over the country, about 250 of you over the last 7 or 8 years. And the truth is, Carla, I tell you this when I get off of coaching calls, almost every coaching call I'm on, I learn something. Sometimes small, sometimes big. Hopefully I'm bringing a lot more value than I'm receiving, but I always learn something. So I've grown a lot as far as my knowledge and understanding of the industry by, yes, running and operating a business, but just as much by coaching people over the last 6 or 7 years. And then I want to point out that me and Carla and my team combined have done 7 pickup and delivery workshops here in Cincinnati over the last 3 years. And I roughly tried to add the numbers up, and I think we're about 100 people have attended
just
those.
A little bit under 100
Yeah,
at this
I
point.
think we're about 100. So we're talking 350 people that we have coached intensely. Some of them intensely for a couple days, and then we coach them when they go home because they get coaching calls with the workshops and things like that. But then 250 of our clients are one-on-one clients I've coached for months and months and months, sometimes years and years and years on their specific business, not mine. So the point is, the reason we do this podcast is we feel like we have a unique perspective as operators of a multi-store chain with pickup and delivery here in Cincinnati. But we also want to remind you that we're not just coming to you as a single operator with a single perspective. So just wanted to put that out there in case anyone isn't familiar with our background. The next thing that I wanted to do is explain to you kind of our 4 priorities for why we go after pickup and delivery and what our goals were that was for, and that's for us independents here in Cincinnati. You may have different goals, you may have different priorities, and that's totally fine, but we just want to explain to you what our 4 are so that once again you understand the context. And then we'll get into describing and dissecting the 4. One of them is, back in 2015, we had been in the industry for about 5 years at that point. We owned a wildly successful chain of laundromats, and we had spent about $3 or $4 million on equipment and infrastructure and things like that. And I had this kind of aha moment where I said, this can't be all there is. Like, this is a good business. We had a nice living and everything, but I thought there has to be more to this. I shouldn't be spending the amount of money I'm spending on equipment and facilities and infrastructure and only making the money we're making. And I always say the laundromat business is a good business. The full-service laundry center business is a great business. And so that's a little bit of the context here too. So I want you to understand that one of our priorities when we launched Pickup and Delivery was to optimize our existing facilities without interfering with our self-serve business. So you may have different priorities. That's totally fine. That was our number 1 priority as we looked at this and said, we've invested in all this capital expenditure. How can we maximize it and generate more revenue from the business that we already have? But we didn't want to cannibalize our current business. So that was one of our priorities. This next one was when we decided to do this, and I haven't always been perfect on this, but one of my goals was not to necessarily just drive a bunch of volume into my store, but to maximize profits. And what I mean by that is I made very intentionally from the beginning, we wanted to be a high margin business, but we also wanted to be diversified. So I knew people that did this and they had 3 or 4 really large accounts. And those 3 or 4 large accounts, if they lost any one of them at any one time, they lost 30, 40% of their business, right? And they would have to lay people off because they lost one customer. And I had kind of learned through the school of hard knocks through them, that was something I didn't want to do. And then what I also learned is sometimes those really high volume clients, they bring you a lot of volume and you might be at a 5% margin. And the only reason it works is because there's so much volume there. Well, what if something happens like COVID and their volume drops? Now all of a sudden I'm doing this work for pennies on the dollar. So that was number 2 for us, is I really just wanted to maximize the profits. I wanted to do, and still to this day, I wanted to do high margin, low volume business so that I could diversify our portfolio of customers. So once again, you may have different perspective there and different goals. If you do, you may not want to do what we do. We're just trying to kind of challenge the status quo with this episode. The next thing we wanted to do is we wanted to be very complementary. And everything I did, I wanted to work at scale. So I said, what works in the beginning? I can work really hard. I can work full-time, 50, 60, 70 hours a week in the business, but I can't scale me, right? I need to be able to build a profit margin and a structure and an org chart and all these things that allows me to do this without me and without you, right? That's my definition of a business versus a job. So that was something that was important to me, and that also requires high margins to be able to build and invest in a rock star team. We also wanted to invest in this business in a segment that was growing in demand. Okay. I think everybody pretty much knows what that means. Is what I always tell people is the demand growing faster than the supply. And this is at least regionally in Cincinnati, but really nationally. And so that's part of why we target certain segments that we'll go over in a minute. The last one is that we wanted to build a business that didn't require us to work in the business at all. Even the 50, 60 hours a week that we can work, or even the 30 or 40 that we might work, we wanted to build a business model that didn't require us. And we wanted to build a team of rock stars, and we knew we need a high margin business to do that. So basically what all those kind of caveats boil down to a couple things. There are 4 different segments that I've determined for pickup and delivery make sense in our industry. If you categorize everyone that would ever offer us a pickup and delivery laundry service as a customer, I've kind of put them into 4 silos. And what we want to do is we want to break those down for you now. And what I always tell people is there's 3 of them that I love. I'm very misunderstood and thought Dave only does residential. And newsflash, that is one of the 4. But the small business and what I call true commercial and industrial are the other 3. And we want to break those down for you and explain why we go after those customers and how we go after them. If we have to give them bids and custom quotes, which sometimes we do, how do we quote those things? So that's the kind of framework for the episode. I know it took a few minutes to get into it, but I think it's really important that we understand the context instead of just throwing a bunch of information at you.
Whether you already have a laundromat or are looking to get into the laundry industry, everyone needs proper drainage. We use HM Company drain troughs. Their drain troughs were first created in 1991, and they have been the leading drain trough manufacturer ever since. They're made in the USA, and their drain troughs are fully customizable to meet your needs. That's why we've used them ever since entering the industry. They're easy to clean for our staff and plenty sturdy when we need to walk on them when servicing our washers. With the ability to span up to 25 feet, our troughs rarely need to be connected together, creating an easy installation. Want to slope your trough like we do? No problem. Just let the experts at HM Company know. For more information, go to their website at draintroughs.com. That is draintroughs.com. HM Company Drain Troughs. They've been leading the industry since 1991. Check them out today. Okay, so now that you kind of know the backstory, you know our perspective, where we come from, let's get into those 4 categories or silos, as Dave likes to call like everything. Segments.
Is what I call
segments. It. You said silos too.
I know.
Anyway, so the first one, we'll start with the obvious one is residential. There's been various reports about the residential pickup and delivery area. That's the segment that everyone sees is really growing, that has still a lot of potential because there's still a lot of customers out there that don't even realize the service exists. Yeah. They still think that we're just dry cleaning pickup and delivery. Mm-hmm. We're like, no, we do your socks and underwear, like everything. So this is one of our greatest focuses. With residential, we're talking, just exactly what it is. You're delivering straight to their house. It's families, it's people. For us, our pickup and delivery residential orders, they average around 40, 45 pounds an order, is pretty typical. Something else with them is there's not really any price negotiation with residential. We basically have, this is your price. The only discount would be if you sign up for reoccurring. We do offer 5% off, but the price is what it is. Now for us, for our pickup and delivery, we are fully customizable and we are all-inclusive pricing. So by all-inclusive, I mean they do not pay to have some things hung or some things laid flat to dry. They do not pay differently for different detergents. Like basically that is their price no matter what they choose. And then they have the 5% off if they sign up for biweekly or monthly reoccurring pickups. But that's really about it. Now, within this residential market, we've found a couple of ideal avatars, I guess you could say, or ideal customers. Basically, you're looking for those customers that have more money than time. Now, that does not necessarily mean they make a lot of money. Sometimes this can definitely be your middle-class family that has a couple kids kids that they're running to soccer practice and baseball practice and they're running all the time, and both the parents work, and they might not make a ton of money, but they have more money than they have time because their time is so tied up. Or it could be that they work a lot of overtime, or it could be even a young professional that works a lot of overtime and they just don't have the time to do their own laundry, or they've decided that they hate it enough that it's worth the cost of that luxury. I don't know, Dave, do you want to talk any more about the residential?
Yeah, when we launched, I didn't know what we know today, of course, in any realm. But the truth is, when we launched, I saw this as kind of a service business for residential and what we now call small business. And we'll go into that in a second here too. But one of the things I knew right from the get-go is I wanted to build a diversified business. And I knew that would take a little bit longer. It's kind of what I said a minute ago about the big 3 clients. I knew I didn't want to just have several big clients. I'm fine with sprinkling those in, and we do have some of those. But I wanted to build a diversified business, a revenue stream around the concept that if I lost any 15 to 20 customers on one particular day, we would be fine. Right? Now, of course, that didn't happen in year 1, but that was my goal because I knew this was a labor-intensive business, and I knew that we were going to have to hire a bunch of human beings, right? And we take really personally the responsibility of when we create a job, one that's very gratifying to us, a job that didn't exist in the world now exists because of us, but we could remove that from the labor pool just as quickly, right? And so I wanted to try to build a business that was very diversified in that way. That happened when we launched in 2015. That mindset kind of came into my scope, I guess you would say, mainly because I looked around in about 2015, and it's still happening today. Our society of how we humans just interact personally as a consumer level really started to shift from more of a I do it myself to a I want everything done for me. Everybody says
service industry.
Yeah,
it's all about service. Industry.
Everybody says that's because of Gen Z and the millennials and whatever, and I'm sure that's probably partially true. But the truth is, as we sit here today when this is being recorded in late 2024, that's never been more true than it is today, but it was starting to happen 10 years ago when we launched pickup and delivery. And so I looked at a combination of all those things, and I just thought it makes sense to go after residential, right? High margin, low volume. The other thing that I thought of is our facilities, right? Our facilities are built in a way that's designed to service a bunch of smaller orders. Even though we consider an 80-pound order for self-serve, a big machine, and when you compare it to industrial and commercial and all these different segments, our facilities aren't really built to handle industrial laundry. We don't have million-pound tunnel washers and things like that, right? We don't have 30,000 square foot facilities and things like that. So I looked at all these things and said, okay, who am I? Who do I want to be when I grow up as far as a business? And is there a market for this type of business? And all of those things kind of screamed residential. Does that make sense?
I think another thing with residential is when you focus on residential, and this applies with small business as well, is it's a lot easier to scale because it's typically a more gradual increase. You pick up a few more customers. Every time you pick up a customer, you're looking at, 30 to 50 pounds.
Yeah.
It's not like you pick up a commercial customer and suddenly you're looking at 800 pounds getting added. And you've got to figure out how to do all those pounds in your current facilities. And a big challenge with pickup and delivery and scaling pickup and delivery is robbing your self-serve. You don't want to grow so much that suddenly your self-serve customers aren't able to get a machine. And that's if you have the manpower to do those 800 pounds or whatever, it's also on your machines, and you don't want to rob your self-serve income to do that pickup and delivery. And it's a lot easier to kind of gradually increase your pickup and delivery within your self-serve. And then when it outgrows your self-serve space, so when it gets to the point that, self-serve customers are having trouble finding a machine, that's when you can look to things like going to, second shift or third shift processing and different things like that. So it allows you to kind of scale gradually as opposed to some of those bigger clients.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal point, Carla, and not really part of the 4 segments, but I want to hit on what you said real quick because I think it's important. It's, I always tell coaching clients and people come to our workshop that are launching from zero for pickup and delivery. The self-serve aspect is all 100% true. But I also always tell them, everybody wants to be shot out of a cannon until they're shot out of a cannon. Then like, what did I do to myself, right? And so when it comes to business, be careful what you ask for, because what you don't want is to go buy a van and have some attendants and own a laundromat and go land a 20,000 pound a week account. That's an industrial account at 50 cents a pound. You may think you want that. Trust me, it will eat you alive and it will destroy your business, right? So I think it's a great point that focusing on residential accounts when you launch, does it take maybe 12, 18, 24 months to really scale up? Yes. But that's a good thing, right? Because you need that time to build your operational structure. And of course, we do workshops where we share all this with you, and we have a 140-page handbook. So yes, we can accelerate that for you, but we can give you all this information and we can show you how it's done in our operation. But to go home and actually execute and build that, it takes a couple years. So make no mistake, you're not going to be shot out of a cannon and it be a blessing to your business and your family if you go at it that way. The odds of you surviving in that environment are probably less than 5%. So be careful what you ask for. That's a big part of why we did go after this segment of the business. And because I've coached so many people, I can tell you, you don't want it to go slow. You don't want to have to beg for business, but you do want it to be nice and steady and consistent. You were talking about every few days you pick up an order or two, and the average order size is 43 pounds. That's what you want, because that first 6 to 12 months, you want to be able to crawl before you walk and walk before you run, right? So I think that's important to understand too.
And I think that goes back to something that we say all the time, and something we were guilty of early on with pickup and delivery is you don't want to chase the volume. You don't want to chase the revenue, which is what we were guilty of. You want to chase the profit. So basically, you don't want every client, which is the whole premise behind this episode. You want the clients that you can handle, that will make you profitable.
Want more profits out of your laundromat business? Let us tell you about our new company, LaundroBoost, and how it can help you to boost your profits. You may be thinking you've used digital marketing companies before and they wasted your time and money. Well, that's why LaundroBoost was born. As 14-year veteran laundromat operators ourselves, we've been there, and it's sickening.
So what makes LaundroBoost different? Our team combines technical digital marketing with veteran laundromat operators and coaches to give your campaigns the ideal blend for getting you results. But then we take it a step further with our strategy. Our strategy is to be hyper vigilant with every marketing dollar, so no fluff.
Yeah, in the beginning, we focus on a 3-pronged approach that we think is unique in the industry. The first is website design and landing pages, making sure those are honed in properly. The second is daily analytics studies and strategy with your Google AdWords campaigns. And the third is geofencing. It focuses on your nearest competitors and where your ideal customers live and where they shop. We believe we've got something special, and we've spent our own dollars here in Cincinnati to test it, and we're growing faster now than ever before.
To learn more, schedule a free discovery call and market study for your market. Visit laundroboostmarketing.com today. Okay, so our next segment that we're going to talk about is small business. And I think a lot of people just lump this into commercial, but it's a very different category of commercial. For small business, basically the order size is not much different than residential. It just happens to be a business. Some examples of this, and we have a lot of clients that fall into this category. Things like salons doing their towels, or massage places doing their sheets and towels, gyms doing their towels. I don't know why I'm only on towels, but a lot of small businesses tend to be towels for some reason.
Aprons, things like that.
Aprons, things like that. Uniforms, sometimes small uniform orders. With the small business, typically they're going to pay that same price as the residential because they're not really any different than a residential in that the order sizes are just as small. Your pickups are probably just as frequent, things like that. For that one stop, the logistics into that one stop, you're only getting back, maybe 30 to 50 pounds, same as that residential customer.
I've done it to myself, but Dave doesn't like commercial, right? And Dave only does residential at Queen City Laundry. We probably have several hundred customers that are technically commercial customers that I don't consider commercial, right? I consider them small business, or at sometimes I refer to them as retail customers, like Orange Theory Fitness, or like you said, a chiropractor, or a bagel shop or something like that. I love these customers. I have nothing against them, but we kind of put them in their own little segment as number two. But until recently, when I started to kind of segment these out so I could hopefully do a better job of kind of teaching and inspiring the industry, the truth is I always threw them in with residential, because other than the fact that we go to a business to pick it up and drop it off, nothing else is really any different. The average order size is actually a little bit smaller than our residential. They're usually sending us 25, 30 pounds every week. Or if they send us 50 or 60 pound, it's every couple weeks. And yeah, it's white towels, so that's a little easier to fold and package, but it's not a high enough volume to matter, right? We still have to go to 20 different businesses to get 1,000 pounds of laundry. We still have to go to each individual location twice, once to pick it up and once to drop it off. There are no economies of scale in processing. There's no economies of scale in logistics of I can drive to one hotel and pick up 2,000 pounds of laundry. They typically want it back the next day, so there's no efficiencies of scale there. So at the end of the day, while it is technically a business, it's technically a commercial customer. I've never looked at it that way, and I don't really recommend you look at it that way. We don't treat them any different. Occasionally, we will have the small business customers call or whatever and ask for a quote because they think they're a business and they're expecting, they go on our website and they see our commercial or our residential rates of $249 a pound. And they're like, oh, well, what can you do for commercial? I mean, we have, towels and blah, blah, we have 50 pounds a week. And like Carla said, we basically tell them we can't offer you any discount. These are how we structure our discounts for commercial customers. And you don't apply to any of these things. And we'll break those down for you in the fourth segment to show you what we mean by that. But honestly, we don't need to spend a whole lot of time on this, Carla, because at the end of the day, it is a business, but it's basically treated in our world, in our mind, in our pricing structure, and our margins as just another residential customer. We just happen to be going to a business.
Yes. And for both residential and small business, both of those segments, we do work at a 30% profit margin. So that's how we price. And if you do attend our workshop, we teach you not only how to process the laundry to get your efficiencies down to where you can get a 30% margin at a reasonable price, but we teach you how to price in your market for the margin you want or for the 30% margin like we do. But basically, residential and small business, they're the same. 30% margin, pretty much the price is what it is. There's a 5% discount for recurring, but that's usually it. There's not a whole lot of negotiating there.
And before we get into the last two, Carla, that makes up about 80% of our revenue. About 80% of our revenue and 80% of our profit is from the residential and small business world. Like I said, we have hundreds of clients that technically some of you might call commercial, while you think that I don't like commercial. I'm not telling you not to go after those clients. We love those customers. Just make sure your pricing structure is right. Now, the last two, this is where we're gonna have some conversation.
Okay, so the next segment we're going to talk about is what we call industrial. Yeah. And this definitely gets lumped into commercial. For sure. Industrial is when you think about those big companies like the Centoses of the world, where you're just talking about they have those plants with those tunnel washers that are just, churning out thousands of pounds per hour. We are not that. And this is where I think Dave gets quoted as, I don't like commercial. Yes. It's not all commercial. It's the industrial. And we want to push to try to change the language of how we refer to the different customer segments. So if everybody can just adopt our way of doing it, it's residential, small business, and then what a lot of people talk about that we like to stay away from is industrial. Yeah. Dave, you want to talk a little more about why we don't want industrial clients?
So the main reason we don't, I guess there's maybe two, but there's a bunch of reasons. There's mainly two reasons. One of them is we aren't built for them, right? We're a laundromat. I mean, you may have an industrial plant. If you do, then this doesn't apply to you, right? But we talk to the laundromat industry, and even some good friends of mine who have amazing OPL plants. They are not industrial, right? Now they're not a laundromat, right? They've built a 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 square foot facility.
They have the ironer, they have the folder, they have some of the stuff, but not the tunnel washers.
Right, but if you've ever been, we live in Cincinnati, the Cintas plant in Cincinnati is not too far from here, and I've known people that worked there. These facilities cost about $30 to $50 million to build and operate and run in labor and investment and all of these things. But Cintas is a $1 billion company, right? They actually make most of their money through linen rentals. They don't actually make much from processing the laundry, which is why they can process it at 30, 40, 50 cents a pound, right? And if you're familiar with what a tunnel washer is, if you're not, go Google it and look up some videos. It's a completely different world. If you think a 100-pound washer is big, go look at a ton of washer and how it functions and operates. Go look at automatic folding machines. I'm not talking about a little $100,000 Foltex machine. I'm talking about a folding machine that takes 3 or 4 people on the front end and the back end to run the machine.
If you've ever been to the clean show, they have them there, like in the dry cleaning type section.
And you'll see 3 or 4 people standing on one end, each loading a sheet at the same time. Some of them are specialty machines made specifically for sheets and things like that. Some of them are made specifically for towels. Some of them are more diverse. But these things are incredible. They're incredible operations. And the truth is that we frankly have no business trying to compete with them. But I'm not here to argue or debate with people. I'm here to help. Like, we are here to help you. And all we want you to do is understand the lingo and the conversation we're having so that you can thrive and be successful. My goal, and I'm not saying your goals are the same, but my goal is for you to build a scalable operation where you're not required to work in the day-to-day business that is profitable above and beyond everyone being compensated for the work they do. And when I have these loose conversations with owners that insist they're doing 50, 60, 70 cents a pound for this industrial laundry out of their laundromat and they're making a 30% profit, I'm just here to tell you the math doesn't work, right? Your accounting is messed up, right? And so that's what I want people to understand. Now, at the end of the day, it's your business. If you're happy with what you do, do it. But one of the things we talked about earlier is everything I do in my business, I want it to be scalable, meaning whatever I do at 20%, can I do it at 50 and 70 and 100 and 150% and it be just as profitable, if not more profitable? And the reason I guess it's kind of a hot button for me, Carla, is because in the beginning I didn't do that. And you remember what you told me?
It's like, you're going to grow us into bankruptcy.
You're going to grow us into bankruptcy.
Because he was chasing every account. He was chasing the revenue. He was chasing the volume. Yep. And we didn't have the profit margins.
Yep. And that's what I don't want for you, but I want you to see it coming, right? So this is all comes from a very genuine, intentional place. I have no interest in being right. I just want to help you. I want to protect you from what I did and my mistakes. I want you to learn from those. Because if you've been in the business a year or two, I'm 15 years ahead of you, right? If you've been doing pickup and delivery for a year or two, we've been doing it for 9. And we've made a lot of these mistakes. So we don't put content out and we don't do coaching and workshops just to be right and just to make money. We do it to help you as the industry because we want everyone in the industry to thrive. So if you're happy with your business, then by all means, don't let me tell you otherwise.
So to recap where we're at so far, so we're talking about the 4 different segments of the pickup and delivery market. So far, we've talked about residential and small business. Those have 30% margins. So that represents about 80% of our market. It's got 30% profit margins. That's what we mostly rely on for our customer base. Next, we talked about industrial. This would be like the Cintas, the Aramark. These are very small profit margins. These are very, very large order size. These are what we stay away from because you can't make the profit margins. We're not designed for those as a laundromat. They're just not a realistic client base for us. The 4th category, this is what we call true commercial. Mm-hmm. So when we talked about before, when you go to these conferences and stuff like that, and they talk about commercial, I think a lot of people lump small business, industrial, and what we call true commercial all into one category of commercial. And what we'd like to do is really break them out because if you lump them all together, that's a whole lot of different types of customers. Mm-hmm. So we have our small business, which are basically like residential customers. They just happen to be in a business. At the other end, we have industrial, these huge order size, these behemoths that they're constantly wanting to renegotiate the price and they want 50 or 60 cents or maybe even less per pound. Mm-hmm. That basically you need those tunnel washers for. In the middle of that is what we call true commercial. Now with true commercial, there are sometimes right fit. Mm-hmm. They're not always the right fit, but they can be the right fit. I think the big separator between being the right fit for us is their price sensitivity. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we have these clients, and it might even be a smaller hotel that maybe has used the Cintas in the past, but they've realized that Cintas isn't doing a good enough job for them. They're looking for more of a boutique, high-level service. Mm-hmm. They're willing to pay more for that. They might be our client. But if they're wanting the same deal Cintas is giving them, they're not our client, if that makes sense. And this is the type of client that they have more volume than that small business. And because of that, and their needs vary from the typical small business order, sometimes we can negotiate a price on that. Dave, you want to talk a little bit more about those true commercial and then also how we negotiate prices?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Carla. So here's the deal with true commercial. Typically, and these are just vague numbers, right? Typically, they're going to send us about 150 to 1,000, 1,500 pounds a week. Sometimes that's one pickup a week. Sometimes that's 5 pickups a week. That's something you'll need to account for, right? That's a level of service that they need. That's one of the first conversations I typically have with them. And by the way, if you've never bid these customers, they almost always have no idea what 1,000 pounds of laundry looks like, right? So you would not believe how often I talk to people. They're like, yeah, I think we have about 1,000 pounds a week. Okay, great. We can give you this price and blah, blah, blah. And I'll go through that with you in a minute. But it's always funny because we go pick up and it's 200 pounds. And 200 pounds looks like a lot of laundry to them, but they've never seen 1,000 pounds. So of course they didn't weigh it. So you got to be careful when you're bidding to understand where they fit. The good news is I still call the true commercial customers anywhere between that 150 pounds a week and up to, like I said, 1,000, 1,500, maybe 2,000 pounds a week. But a lot of people stop there and they're just like, okay, Dave said this, or somebody said 150 to 1,000 pounds, they're commercial. There's actually way more nuance to this than that. And that's what I really want to drill into here today. One of them is, Carla mentioned it earlier, what types of businesses, and there's a million of them out there, but to give you an idea, this is about 10, 15, 20% of our business, and it's very profitable for us, but it's because we're choosy. We're picky, and that's what we recommend you do. We love these customers. We would love to have 100 more of these customers, but we don't want the wrong customers. We only want the right ones. And one of the things that we learned is these are like boutique hotels, Airbnbs, even Airbnb management companies, which is different than just an independent, churches, big churches, banquet centers, even manufacturing plants, things like that. These can all kind of fall into that category. But here's the thing, and Carla touched on it. These true commercial customers fall into two mindsets. And the first thing that I try to do, other than the volume game of how much laundry do you have, is I try to figure out within the first 30 seconds that I'm talking to them, usually on the phone for the first call, is what's their mindset. One of them is a commodity mindset, okay? They only value price. I don't think I need to say any more than that. They're looking for big discounts, and they're typically delusional, right? They think they are an industrial account. They think they are going to get treated as if they have 10,000 pounds a week of laundry or 5,000 pounds a week of laundry, in which the Cintas of the world do want them, but they're not that, right? Or they have a higher level of service needs that a Cintas or an Airmark can't provide to them. So where it first comes in is as soon as I talk to them, I try to figure out real quickly, are they aware of who they are and how they fit in the market, or are they delusional? If they're delusional and they think there's something that they're not, you can't convince them otherwise, right? They don't want to hear about it from you. So you almost have to just kind of say, that's not really the service or the business that we focus on. You probably want to talk to like a Cintas or somebody like that. But before I let them go, I'm of course professional. And one of the things that I do tell them is, these are what we do. We're a boutique service. We focus on customer service and custom orders and things like that. We only focus on customer-owned goods. We don't do linen rentals and things like that. And this is what we do, and we do it really well. If you ever determine that you have a need that falls into this category, this is what we specialize in. But we don't compete with Cintas, right? We don't compete in their world. And I explained real quickly that they're more of an industrial volume and industrial needs and industrial pricing. And within 30 to 60, maybe 90 seconds, I try to figure these things out. So are they a commodity mindset or what I call a value mindset? The other side of the equation is they're a value mindset if they understand their place in the market. They are not delusional. They are not under the impression that they're going to get industrial pricing. They understand that they have different needs and different volumes, and that their volume is higher than a small business or a residential customer. So yeah, we can probably work a better price out with them than $2.49 a pound. And I will basically walk them through the process of how we do that. They do typically want some kind of a discount. And honestly, we can almost always find a discount. So the way I start the conversation on pricing is our standard retail price for residential and small business orders is $2.49 a pound. What kind of volume are you thinking you have, and how often do you need service? With that, I can usually figure out real quickly. Sometimes they don't even want to talk about that. Well, just tell me what your price is. They're just like, well, I'm paying Cintas 55 cents a pound right now. Can you beat that? Like, this conversation is over in 10 seconds, right? With me. Now, you do what you want with this, but that's the way that I approach these things.
You do a good job of talking with them about basically, if you can save us, I will pass those savings on to you. Can you talk a little bit about that, about how you negotiate price with them and how you decide what the discount can be?
Yeah, so this is a little bit of kind of a, I don't know if gamesmanship is the right word, but I mean, it's a sales process. I've been in many sales positions, inside sales, outside sales. And at the end of the day, you're really not trying to sell anyone anything, right? What you're trying to do is find out if what you do best aligns with their needs, right? That's what a true salesperson does. So I have no problem being very authentic and transparent, in our content and everything we do, but also in the laundry world itself. So here's essentially what I tell people. There's basically 6 ways that I can save you money. It all depends on your needs. So let's talk through those 6. What are your needs? Be very authentic with me so that we can find what works best for you. And if the 6 things that we're able to give you discounts on, none of them apply to you, then you probably fall in the category of small business, right? And so what those look like is one, distance, and these are in no particular order: distance, proximity from our facility. But the reason I point this out to you is the customer isn't going to care where our facility is, but I care where they're located relative to it. So I call it proximity or distance, right? And so the reason that matters, I'm sure you all know, but the reason it matters is if I'm located in the southwest corner or southeast corner of the city and they're 5 minutes away, then I can provide them with a much higher level of service just geographically.
Well, it's less wear on the vehicle.
Yes.
It's less, miles on it. It's less gas. So we're saving logistic money, basically.
For sure. And keep in mind, they don't care about that, but I point that out to them just so they understand that I'm trying to be fair in the bidding process. We could have the exact same, and I'll go over the other 5 in a second, but we could have the exact same customer come to us, one 5 minutes from our facility and one 35 minutes from our facility. And it could be a difference of 20 or 25% pricing, depending on their needs, right? So I always explain to them, part of that is just distance. Can you tell me where you're located, right? You can't change it. It is what it is. The next one is volume, right? There's a big difference. While you're still true commercial, you're not industrial, there is a pretty significant difference in 100 and 150 pounds a week of white towels or 1,000 or 1,500 pounds of white towels. There's also a difference in number 3, which is the product and service or the product itself. Meaning, is this lab coats where I'm going to have to do stain treatment because you're in a manufacturing facility and you want them to come back looking really pristine and white, which we can do that. That's a level of service we can provide that probably the Cintases of the world won't unless they're renting them to you. But we can do that. But that's very different than white towels, right? And so the product that we're going to be doing, and what are you using the product for? It could be sheets, but it could be sheets in a very dirty facility or sheets in a very pristine facility, right? So those types of things matter. Frequency. How frequent do you need us to come out? And for what volume? So you could have 1,000. Let me give you 2 examples. You could say, I have 1,000 pounds of laundry and I need you to come every morning and give you 150 pounds of laundry 7 days a week. And that's 1,000 pounds of laundry, right? And every time you come and pick up the 150 pounds of laundry, I need it back tomorrow. That's very different if you're 40 minutes from my facility than it is if I come once a week and pick up 1,500 pounds of laundry and you don't need it back until you pick it up on Friday and you bring it back on the next Friday, right? Just our logistical costs drop in half, right? From 16% to roughly 8% if we go there and pick up once. If I can send a truck anywhere in the city and pick up 1,000 pounds of laundry and I have a week to process it, and I take it back to you the next week. And when I take back the next week, I drop off 1,000 and I also pick up 1,000, right? So instead of making 2 trips to your facility, I make 1 trip to your facility. The geography matters, but the frequency matters too. The turnaround time I touched on. Do you need it back tomorrow? Which for residential and small business, we always offer next day returns. We process everything overnight when the store is closed to the public. But if you need it turned around more quickly or less quickly, we might be able to offer you a discount. So everything is 249 is everything based on best case scenario, or I guess worst case scenario.
And part of that I want to address, when they give us more time, a reason that is a money saving for us is that we can then take that order to one of our other laundromat locations, or even the one we process pickup and delivery out of. But we can have our attendants during the day just do them as they get time, along with the drop-off orders that they do during the day. Or we have some of ours. We have 4 locations, and some of them don't do as much drop-off. We can take it over to that location, have them do it. And Dave likes to call it free labor, but it's basically labor that our self-serve laundromats are already kind of covering by having an attendant there, because we're fully attended stores. So it is kind of free labor. It's labor that's already paid for by another service that we offer. So that additional time allows us to utilize that free labor, as Dave likes to call it.
Yeah, and feel free to steal that, right? I mean, that's, once again, is that scalable? No, that's not scalable. So we need to price these differently. But if I have one true commercial customer, and we've had this happen, come to me, and they happen to be 5 minutes from another one of our stores, right? Our stores are all separated by about 15 or 20 minutes. If they're 5 minutes from this store, well, we can easily send a driver over there, pick it up, drop it off at that store, and then they leave, and they go throughout their day. They picked it up from the hotel, they dropped it off to this place, and they don't need it back for a week. They can process almost all of that laundry, typically 500 to 1,000, 1,500 pounds in a week, with what we call excess capacity or free labor. And this is just where our attendants, in their downtime, they know they can always throw 100 pounds of white towels in and knock out the order and sit it on the shelf. And by the end of the week, we're going to have that. So if you don't have 4 stores, you don't have that capability. If you already have used up your free labor, your excess capacity, then you need to build it differently, right? But if I know that I'm bidding this, and my first thing that goes through my head is, hey, this hotel's 5 minutes from our Mount Washington store, we can pick it up, drop it off of there. I might bid them at $1.20 a pound, where I'd normally need to bid it at $1.55 a pound, right? Okay, well, I can't do that every time, but I can do it this time. And if I can still economically be profitable at $1.25 a pound, I'll happily do that, even though I can only do that one time. So I think that's what some of you out there are doing right now, and that's awesome. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever, but just don't be under the impression you can build a business around that, right? Unless you have a chain of laundromats and you have unlimited excess capacity and all these things. If you do, then absolutely you can tap into those things. But that's one of those things where I kind of caution people. I'm like, yeah, you're doing this order at $1 a pound, but you can't do 10 orders like that at $1 a pound. So it's fine to do the first one at $1 a pound. Just understand your margins and your pricing structures and the level of service you're providing, and just know you can't do that again. Because where people get in danger is they do something once and they think they can repeat it. By the way, if you're not looking at the video version right now, I'm raising my hand really high, okay? Because I did these things, and I don't want you to do these things. Just learn from my dumb mistakes, okay? The last one, too, at the 6th that I told you about as far as how we bid these, is tell me about the folding and packaging. What type of presentation do you need, right? Now, with true commercial, if you're talking about sheets and hotels, or sheets and towels and things like that, they typically don't want them to be wrinkled, but they don't always need them to be ironed, right? And if you know the difference, if you know what an ironer is, then you know what I'm referring to. There are different levels. If you're bidding a 5-star hotel, they're probably going to want them ironed. At this time, we don't have an ironer. We may invest in one someday. We also don't have a sheet folding machine, which can make the labor very efficient. We have human beings folding sheets and towels. Now, once again, if you have a facility with a tunnel washer and a folding machine and an ironer, and you've invested in that equipment to go after this part of the industry, and we have some friends that have done that, by all means, go after it. I'm not talking to you when I post on social media or I make certain comments about certain things we don't do. I'm talking to the everyday laundromat owners that don't have a separate facility, that just have a regular old laundromat, and they just have a bunch of washers and dryers and a little bit of folding space. Those are the things that I want us as an industry to be really careful about. But when it comes to folding and packaging, typically what I'm asking them is, tell me about the presentation that you need. Is it okay? I mean, nobody wants them wrinkled, but is it okay if there's a little bit of wrinkles? Meaning we just pull them out of the dryers when they're warm, we lay them flat, or we fold them. We have some clients that will do some linens and table linens and things like that for, and they want them ironed. And we don't offer ironing service, so we can't help them, and we tell them that. The next day, I might get a call from another hotel that might also be a 5-star, and this has really happened, by the way, might also be a 5-star hotel. And they say, oh, we have a steamer. Don't worry about ironing them. We're just trying to get a better price point. Okay, well, the way I can give you the best price point if I don't have an ironer and I don't have labor, and we do this for some of our clients, is we just take Z-racks, and if you don't know what that is, it's the big rolling racks that typically hang a set of hangers on, and we'll take Z-racks and we clean them down real good. We'll pull the linens, the tablecloths, out of the dryers when they're warm so there are no wrinkles, and we'll actually lay them flat over the side of the Z-rack. And then we'll take some commercial stretch wrap and stretch wrap them to them. We can hang about 15 to 20, 25 table linens over a Z-rack and stretch wrap it together and just roll the whole Z-rack right up into our van. And we can fit 3 or 4 Z-racks in one van and take you 100 linens. And will they have some little tiny subtle wrinkles in them? Yes. But for the most part, they're wrinkle free. That client found that perfectly acceptable. We could give them a much better price point because guess what? We don't have to fold and package anything. Mm-hmm. We just pull them out of the dryer, hang them over the Z-racks, stretch wrap them, and roll them into their facility. So that's just another example of what do you need? Do you need a finished product? Like our residential customers, they want them what we call drawer ready, right? Mm-hmm. Nice presentation with a sticker on top and all this. Do you need commercial folding? And by the way, this is a big one. Do you need no folding at all? There are people, and it's not super common, but there are people that send things in, shop rags and things like that. And they're like, hey, we just want them washed and dried. We don't care if they're wrinkled. Doesn't matter to us. Okay, great. Well, we can give you what we call our wash-dry bag pricing structure, right? So it's just to reiterate real quickly, how we bid these out are distance, proximity to our facility. The volume, 150 to 1,000, 1,500 pounds, tends to be kind of that true commercial client. The product, what are we actually doing and dealing with? Are we doing state and treatments? Are we doing white towels? The frequency, how frequent do you need us to come? And the frequency of a turnaround time. Do you want it pick up today and brought back tomorrow, or can we keep it for a week and process it with free labor? And then the last one is folding and packaging. Do you want it nice and presentable, a very premium product, or can we just throw it in a bag and you'll take it from there, right? All these things factor into the price. And of course, I don't take this long, but I will very quickly explain to a true commercial client, these are the 6 ways that we can find discounts for you. And basically,
I actually want to add one thing that wasn't in the 6, and this is something that instead of this is a way we can give you a discount, is this is a way we can't give you a discount, because we've run into this as well, is does it require any additional purchases for you? Because, like Dave mentioned, we had the client where we hung all of the tablecloths over those Z-racks. Well, if you currently don't have Z-racks and have no need to purchase them other than this client you're getting, you have to factor that into the pricing. Like you're going to have to invest in extra Z-racks or extra, storage bins, or I don't know, different things depending on, or maybe your truck isn't big enough to fit those Z-racks that they want them on. You might have to buy a new truck to be able to take this client and to deliver to them what they're looking for. So kind of against the discounts, you also have to figure out, is there any additional costs that gaining this client is going to cause me to incur? But anyway.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic point. Because once again, if you got to buy a special truck or a lift truck or something like that, box truck, that's a totally different animal. The Z-racks aren't super expensive, but they do add up. They're a couple $100.
We had to buy a ramp so we could roll the Z-racks in.
Yep,
that's something we didn't already have on our truck.
Absolutely. And then one thing to factor in too is, I always say it's easy for me to spend your money. I tell my coaching clients that all the time, but also remember too, okay, well, I have to do this once. But like that ramp we can use for any of our vehicles, right? Or if we bought at one point, we got a hotel client that we really weren't positioned for, and they weren't really signing a contract, but we knew we were going to keep them for a couple years minimum. And they agreed to a pretty significant price point. I was like, well, okay, well, I'll go buy Z-racks, right? If you'll give me $1.90 a pound, right? And I can process it with free labor. And the good news is those Z-rags and those totes and those rolling bins and all that stuff, they last freaking forever. And they don't need to look nice. So part of this is, do you want to go after this segment of business, right? If your facilities can otherwise support this, your operations and your team can support this, you already have vans, you just need a ramp. A ramp was like a couple $100 for us to buy, right? But if you don't have a couple $100, then that's not a customer you want to go after. But my point is, when you make those investments, the hotel client I'm referring to, they built their own laundry room. We eventually lost them after a while, and we had all these Z-racks sitting around. And then not too much longer later, another client came along, and we already had these things, right? So you can do small, insignificant investments in your business if you're focusing on this true commercial business. but just understand that it's different than industrial or small business.
Also, so basically when Dave negotiates a price for these true commercial clients, he factors in those 6 things and then the 7th of any additional costs, but those 6 potential discounts. And he really talks to them about, well, if with this, you're only wanting to pick up once a week, that can save me this much money. I can drop the price down to this or whatever. One of the issues, though, is sometimes you don't know, well, how much will that save me? Or sometimes the issue is they say they're going to be 1,000 pounds a week, but then when I go, it's 250 pounds every week.
Yep.
So something else I want to bring up is we've, in the past, sometimes taken on a client at a rate for the first delivery. Maybe we'll do this at $1 per pound for this first order and let us try it out and see where else we can find savings, or if this is not a win-win price and we might need to bump it up. We're not sure that we can be profitable at $1 per pound. And then go and do that order the first time. And what we do is then with that first order, if you're not sure where you can save or how much you can save, is literally price out everything that went into that order. Like exactly how many hours of labor went into and what was the labor rate, exactly how many miles you put on your truck and how much that would be in wear and tear and gas. Like truly determine the costs of that order. And then you can say, okay, all right, I got it down to the cost for it was 90 cents a pound. Am I okay doing this for, 10 cents a pound profit? If you are, move forward with the order. If not, go back to them and say, okay, we looked at this, but I think we're really going to need to charge $1.10 or whatever.
And the thing I'll point out, in addition to everything she said, is every time you do this, you'll kind of find some similarities between one you've bid before, right? So if you do this 10, 20, 30 times, you'll get better at it. Because while no one client and their needs are exactly the same, you'll find 3 or 4 kind of similarities. And you're like, okay, I can pretty comfortably say, if I can, once again, our logistical costs are, within our framework of our business, what we teach in our workshops is 16% of our revenue. Okay, well, I can pretty comfortably say that if I can come to your facility every Friday and pick up and drop off 500 pounds at the same, I drop off 500 and pick up 500, which saves me a trip. Pretty comfortably, I can saves me 15% or 8% of my logistical cost, right? Now, if I'm picking up 500 pounds every Friday, there's probably additional savings there. So yeah, let's round up and call it 10%, right? But she is right, especially when I first started doing this and still on some very, very nuanced orders. We have some people that come to us and they're like, hey, we're an hour and a half away from you. Can you service us? And generally speaking, the answer is no, we're not coming an hour and a half outside our facility. But the truth is we have some regular clients that we do that for. But if we send a truck that far and we pick up 150 bags of laundry at one time and we charge you $2.29 a pound, right? We have a camp that we do this for. Then heck yeah, we'll do that, right? Because the cost of sending a truck 2 hours and back 2 hours and back 2 hours again and back, that's 8 hours. And we literally just micromanage it out. And if you do the math and the math works, then you say, this is the price I need to charge, right? So I think that's a fantastic point. Always keep that in mind as well. Once again, don't do what we do. Just use the framework of how we figure these things out to make sure that you're profitable. That's what we really want. So really what it boils down to is, and by the way, I don't spend this amount of time with them. I just very quickly say, tell me about these 5 or 6 things. Each one of these I can probably, figure out if we have any savings. And what I tell them is our goal is to make the same amount of money on your order, whether it's a big or a small order, or maybe even a little bit less. So any efficiencies that I find in what you need versus a retail, residential, or small business customer would need, I'll pass on to you. And I'll tell them, hey, if I can figure out how to save 50% on my end, I will pass all of that 50% on to you. And usually they're like, wow, I really appreciate that. But one of the things I want to point out too is with this true commercial segment, it's not the industrial, which we want to avoid, and it's not the small business, and it's not the residential, but we are willing to accept lower margins on these true commercial customers because it's in exchange for volume, right? So in addition to the discounts, we don't really focus on getting a 30% margin. If we think we can competitively, then we will, because we really want 30% margins. But our target is, or our floor, I should say, is 15. So we're not willing to do anything for less than 15% margin. If we have to bid below 15% margins, we don't want the account. Now, once again, I'll stress it for the 5th time. If you're okay with 10% or even 5%, hey, power to you, right? I'm not here to tell you how to run your business. We just want to make sure you know. If you think you're making 5 and you made a mistake, you're making none. If you think you're making 15 and you made a mistake, you're making 10, right? So keep that in mind too. I always try to give myself a little
5%?
wiggle room. Well, yeah, they're all nice, even 5%, Carla. No, I try to give myself a little bit of wiggle room there. But the truth is, as I mentioned several times, about 85% of our business is residential and small business, which is about 30% margins. And that's actually growing. We think we can get into the mid to high 30s eventually. And that 20% that we do of what we call true commercial, most of that is in the 20s. Most of it's not in the 15s, but some of it's in the 30s. And so we found to round out somewhere in the 20-25% range for those. And so what you end up with is a really healthy business. And the reason that all this matters is if you go back to some of our initial points that why we did pickup and delivery, we wanted to be able to build a business model that didn't require us. And that requires layers of management, right? For any of you that have ever coached, for any of you that ever come to the workshop, you've met our team or you've heard about our team, and they're amazing, right? But to find rock stars and to build layers of management, I mean, we have a GM that runs our company, 2 assistant GMs, store managers at each location. We have an assistant store manager at one of our locations. We have maintenance guys that work for us part-time. We have delivery drivers and processors, and they're all very well compensated relative to the rest of the industry. They really are. And that's a big part of how we can do that is we can afford to compensate them at a higher level than somebody that's out here doing business at 3% margins, right? And so at the end of the day, the synopsis here is just know your numbers, know what you're doing, make sure that you understand these 4 kind of segments of business that are out there. And once again, it's not a perfect science. They're hybrids and they'll move around, but understand who they are and what they're trying to do and see if you can match your success with their success. Because in business, it's always best if everybody's winning. You don't ever want someone winning a lot and someone losing or only winning a little bit. That doesn't work for anyone involved.
All right. So hopefully that clarified a little bit on our ideal avatars or customers for pickup and delivery.
I do not hate commercial, okay?
Dave does not hate commercial, and we would like to redefine commercial into small business, industrial, and then in the middle, true commercial. Yeah. So that's our new definition. And so now you can go around saying Dave hates industrial.
I'm totally fine with that.
All right, but that's it for today. So thank you for listening to the Laundromat Millionaire Show, sponsored by HM Company Drain Troughs, and we will see you next time. Take care.
Right. Thanks, guys. Take care.
They're very reliable. If I don't know what I'm saying here, so I'm going to cut this out. So that represents about
economical.
Hold on. Sorry.
Almost bless you.
Yes. All right.